before we dive in, and some of our good friends, sorry, I'm echoing a bit. Some of our good friends yesterday, they were like, oh, great, you and Mikhail are on a panel again, and you're going to talk about the same stuff you've been talking about for 10 years. And in fact, that is true. But what we're going to do today is we're really going to take our time. We're going to act like the audience. Mikhail and I specifically, this is what we get paid to do, is to think about strategically and out of home, how do we tie in mobile, how do we tie in data, et cetera. But what we want to do today is literally ask the questions that maybe you forgot to ask 7 years ago, and everything is advanced really fast. So what we're going to do is actually talk about a case study that is actually in progress right now with our good friends at Empower and Wendy's. But more importantly, what we want to do is have a few takeaways. So quick raise of hands, agency folks in the room. Excellent. Thank you for not being at the pool. And then I saw the pool yesterday. I was like, no way we're competing with that. And then obviously the rest of you guys are vendors. So for the sales folks, what we want to be able to do is have a better education on how to sell mobile to brands and agencies, how to better understand it. And then for our agency friends in the room is to kind of better educate for you guys to sell through internally. And with the silos that exist today with, hey, my agency doesn't buy mobile, we just buy out of home. We hope after today, having our great friend here, she'll kind of debunk those. So we're going to first dive into a quick video. And what this video is going to do is actually set the stage for the campaign that's running, and we're going to dissect it for you guys over the next 35 minutes. So before Mikhail dives into the vocabulary, the big joke is that one model in the video, she literally did not even touch that hamburger at all. She nipped the lettuce a tad. So Mikhail, we saw a lot of terminology that went through that video and a lot about what we'll talk about today. Why don't you walk through kind of in detail?
Sure. So we'll cover a couple of key concepts here. I know a lot of times you're at these panels and people spit out some terms, then you have to Google it, and then you're not actually paying attention to the panel. So let's just get those out of the way. First one, behavioral targeting. So it's kind of exactly as the name suggests. It's a targeting methodology when we're looking at the behavior of a consumer, whether it's offline or online. So offline can be where are they at that point in time. For example, you saw somebody at a fitness center or where they have been throughout their daily journey. Online behavior can be what's the specific app or the content they're looking at from which we can derive some kind of information about the user and their interests. Geofencing, that's kind of your basic location-based targeting where you're creating a geofence or a zone around a specific location and using that as your main basis for delivering mobile impressions. Geoconquesting, that's what you saw them doing at the competitor locations. So it's basically geofencing around competitor locations. POI, point of interest, again, locations that are of interest to a specific audience or specific target group within a campaign. And that could be anything from a health club or a fitness center, as you guys saw in that example. KPI, so that's key performance indicator. That's basically a brand or agency's main measure of success and how are they looking at success, and we'll get into some of those metrics as we talk about measurement and actual results within the campaign. CTR, click-through rate, super straightforward. That's just a percentage of impressions that wind up in clicks. Attribution, so attribution is basically kind of ascribing the results of a given campaign into some kind of action. So basically, how do you give credit to a mobile campaign, or how do you give credit to an out-of-home campaign in leading into some kind of action, whether it's an online action or an offline behavior, like a walk-in that you guys saw into one of the 5 Wendy's stores that we geofenced. And that's the kind of VWI, that's the verified walk-in, which you guys saw there in the video.
Cool. So we'll dive right in. Erin, take us through how this campaign came into fruition, understanding that the unique side of it is you guys actually went in and pitched it to the Wendy's client.
Yeah, so I was all prepared to talk about the base core out-of-home plan that we executed, but I'm going to be very time conscious and just tell you, trust me when I say we built a very strong, a very high reach, a very directional, traditional billboard campaign in the marketplace. And this, we're actually talking about the GSA DMA in particular, and like Ian said, this launched I think on 4/16, so we've been live for 2 weeks now on 50-something billboards all across the market, and then they're directionally educating consumers about where to go get their Wendy's, get off this exit, or turn right at this corner. But we saw a unique opportunity, and we're seeing this a lot now in our planning sessions when we're talking about goals and objectives. We saw a unique opportunity with this specific campaign to really support further the limited time offer of a Southwest chicken salad and a Southwest chicken sandwich. Already we're going to have a lot of high awareness in the market, but we thought, you know what, let's take this a step further. We can really use this, not new technology, but think about this technology in a different way and incorporate some additional mobile support or supplement the campaign with mobile. And we did it for 3 reasons. We see it as a great opportunity to build frequency and to really create a multi-screen campaign. And maybe that seems a little silly because I'm thinking about the screen as the static billboard that we bought. But I see that as one screen, one avenue for delivery of the message, and then the next screen is on your mobile phone. So we wanted to create a multi-screen campaign. We wanted to build that frequency by delivering a message twice. And then we really also, we at Empower at least, view mobile and out-of-home together as, I like to kind of think of it as a fishing line, and we're pulling the point of sale, we're pulling the line to the point of sale a lot tighter to out-of-home and connecting those avenues even more. So, based on those 3 kind of principles, we decided to layer in mobile, and I'll stop there because I know we're going to cover the rest of the process.
Yeah, no, and I think you bring up a great point. You're very fortunate within your agency where you guys buy everything. And I love the fact that you think of this screen as being not only just the out-of-home screen, but also the mobile screen. And I know some of our agency partners in the room and who aren't in here, that's often the hurdle.
Right.
It's, well, I just strategically buy out of the out-of-home portion. So I think that's a key benefit that, if you want to follow Erin around after this conference, I think it's important to kind of pick her brain where if your agency is siloed out, how do you make that differentiator to say, hey, look, we own this space. Mikhail and I travel a good bit. We talk to a lot of different digital agencies, and I can assure you one thing, they're not very bashful about buying our space. Digital agencies say, perfect, it's out of home, it's part of the mobile experience, we'll buy the out of home part. So that leads us into our next question, Mikhail. You're the expert at this. You have your NFC Adidas shoes, tap scan. So you are the expert. This is what you get paid to do. Talk about the constant education and why that's important, and talk to it from not your perspective as the CEO of a high technology company, but more the reps that have 1,000 emails and the agency that has 15 briefs that they have to get through. The last thing they want to do is learn about something new.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, and you guys can chime in as you wish, I think it's kind of a waterfall effect. So we each have a part in that education. So I think it's not just up to us to educate. I think it kind of goes down the line. So we have to be experts and subject matter experts at what we do and the mobile technology and keep up with all the new trends, new metrics, new targeting, ways of targeting consumers, whether it's behavioral, geo-targeting, all of that kind of stuff. And it's up to us to then kind of go up the ladder, right? So we meet with Julia, kind of educate you on everything that we know, but then it's really up to you to combine that with the knowledge that you have of out of home, which we obviously don't, and then kind of present that to Erin and so on and so forth. So I think it's kind of a group effort in that.
Yeah, and Julia, you have an interesting perspective from the local sales side and the local sales manager. Talk about how you educate your team, but also continue to educate yourself while still running an outdoor plant.
Yeah, so it's definitely a collaborative process. As you can see, there's 4 of us here, and it really takes experts in each individual field to make a campaign like this come to fruition. The most beneficial thing I found is to just stay in the conversation. I actually learned through communicating with one of my agencies about attribution. That was the first time I had ever heard about it. So don't wait until you're an expert in mobile to pitch it, because you're going to learn through exploration with your clients, and your clients are learning just along with you. So don't be afraid to pitch it. Get out there and just start talking about it.
And just to add to that, I feel like from an agency perspective, I've done the best learning by just simply executing and either crashing and burning or having great success. Regardless, I have some sort of learnings to apply to the next time I propose mobile. And I think people like Lamar and your partners like Blue Bite really help agencies along the way in being best prepared for implementing.
Yeah. So we'll continue to go down the path of this dissecting of this campaign, and with the understanding that for the out-of-home folks, our partners at Clear Channel, Brooklyn Outdoor, representing the front row here, everyone that sells, the most important thing is not mobile. The most important thing is how do we better sell out-of-home and have mobile be a part of this, which is our core business, and how the benefits that are added onto this. So the next steps, Empower, you guys shared the idea back to Lamar, which was a bit unique, but excellent when you come back and say, hey, we pitched this through. Talk to us about the responsibilities of the out-of-home shop to kind of understand when to pitch and when to be knowledgeable. And you kind of touched on it briefly a minute ago.
Yeah, I'd like to think we're already very knowledgeable, and I think that's because people like Ian and people like Mikhail have done a really good job in helping keep us educated. But I think I see my role in an agency and a planner and a buyer and a strategy writer as making sure that the education continues. So when we decide to propose mobile, we present it to our account team, we present it to the client. We need to make sure they understand what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. And I think we can all agree, like, our clients are very smart. They all know what out-of-home is. They all know digital. They all know mobile. So I don't think it's necessarily about educating on the technology. It's more educating on the new way in thinking about out-of-home plus mobile equals even a better campaign, and thinking about it more in terms of it's a great strategy versus let me educate you on the tech, because they already understand that. And I think the onus is on whoever owns that client relationship to really make sure that the client understands we're proposing this and this is why, and you should buy it, sign the contract.
Yeah, so you've come back to us at this stage in the process and you say, okay, perfect, I've sold the ideation of it, and they like it. So the next step, and this is both for Julia, you and Erin, walk through the importance of audience metric, the targeting strategy, and in this campaign, which is a bit unique, and it's where we're kind of moving towards, is the attribution aspect of it.
Yeah, well, I'll kick it off. I think once we sell mobile in, it's time to get down to, we have our planning inputs, but we need to build the plan. So, we already have great reach with the core out-of-home plan. We already have great locations, but now we need to think about, all right, this is what we're going to spend on mobile. How many impressions does that get us? And then we need to think about, the great thing about mobile is it makes your out-of-home campaign a lot smarter. We have these great cell phones. We call them, smartphones. I like to think of out-of-home and mobile as smart out-of-home. We don't want to just serve another impression to just an adult 18 plus. We really want to qualify that impression, and we want to think about it in terms of reaching an audience and making that impression work a lot harder. So we work with, our vendors and our mobile partners to think about, I want to not only serve an impression, but I want to reach someone based on their behavior. So not just on their demo, on their behavior. And in this case, for example, it could be a fast food enthusiast. It could be someone that enjoys Tex-Mex. It can be someone that's health conscious. All those behavioral aspects. So, we think about impressions. We think about what does an impression mean, And then, I think we always make this mistake. We need to make sure that we set up measurement in the beginning and talk about attribution, because the last thing you want is to execute this campaign and then not have the numbers to report back to the client on why this was successful, why this works. So I think it's really important to work together and collaborate over, let's set up an attribution measurement mechanism. What does that mean? In this case, it's verified walk-ins and click-through, and make sure that's all set up in the beginning so that, we're set up for success in the end to sustain something like this.
Yeah. So, and that's the perfect point of all this, and why the out-of-home portion is so important, is that mobile device was exposed to out-of-home. Where did that device go over the next 30 days? Did it, in fact, finally visit a Wendy's? Or maybe it did go to that Tex-Mex, or maybe it went to Chick-fil-A.
Right.
So what's the impact that you have on? Julia, talk about, because at this stage we're still educating, and it's still important to understand that. Talk about the expectations, the KPIs on this specific campaign, and also why creative is so important, that it's cohesive, as you guys see on the screen here.
Yeah, so out of home is our core, as she said. Mobile is always kind of presented as a second layer. And then that mobile impression, it needs to encourage some sort of action or engagement. We don't want that mobile impression to just be an impression. That's where the KPIs come in. It can be an app download, it can be exploration of a website to learn more about a company, or in this case, a verified walk-in, or lift in foot traffic. So really setting those client expectations from the beginning will help you evaluate at the end.
Cool. So at this stage, the national rep's super hyped up. He gets that contract in, and then it's kind of that oh shit moment. Like, all right, I know what to do in the out-of-home. I want to make sure that the locations, the shipping addresses for the vinyl, we're on top of that point. Mikhail, talk to us about this point, because this is when it truly begins, that stage of the national rep or the local rep sometimes may say, man, I really wish I wouldn't have sold this because this is a lot of work ahead of me. Debunk that and talk about the identifying scale, the POIs, et cetera, how we go through that process.
Yeah, I think we're not so involved in the process. When Julia and Erin are talking to the client, they already have enough education to have that conversation to get to kind of almost that finish line. So we come into that process at the end to really look at the feasibility of the campaign. So if they've identified an audience, they'll come to us and say, hey, this is the scale, this is the reach that we want to have, this is the audience, and then we can come back with feasibility and say, within this target demographic, within this geography, within these locations, this is what's possible. We established the different targeting methodologies. Again, is it behavioral? What are we looking for? What's the audience behavior that we want to target? We look at the locations, and this is where we bring in the geoconquesting, the POIs. What are the specific locations that you want to target? And then finally, what are the actual metrics and the KPIs? And we'll get into that in terms of kind of the measurement, because then we have to set up certain processes and certain things in place before the campaign starts to be able to measure that during the campaign and to deliver that reporting back to the brand. So that's really important to kind of go through all those steps, and obviously the creative and all that kind of stuff goes through that last phase. Speaking of creative, that's something you want to also establish not all the way at the end, because if there are certain things that you want to change or tweak, it's very hard to go back to the agency and the creative folks and say, hey, we're launching in 2 days, can you make this little change? So you want to keep kind of creative in mind throughout the entire process, and the creative should help you drive to whatever that KPI ultimately is.
Yes.
Yeah, and that consistency of the creative is key, because otherwise it just looks like a scrambled campaign, right? So you may have this beautiful out-of-home creative, but then the mobile experience may be my favorite junior bacon cheeseburger. I only eat them after midnight on certain late nights. But if the creative's not consistent, then that experience is lost, right? As you saw those two ladies at the gym, it's a health conscious, it's a wrap. So I think the other important key here is to making sure that the understanding of the creative flexibility, just as our medium is flexible with creative, as can the mobile. So you were talking about measurement. Let's kind of talk about, impressions, click-throughs, and then if you guys can share anything about this case study. I know it's live and there may be some sensitivities, but.
Yeah, sure. So I can kind of take it from the top of the funnel down. So at the top of the funnel, you have your impressions. And if that's a KPI, usually for out-of-home, that's one of the main KPIs, is driving branding and impressions and awareness. On the mobile side, that's not usually a KPI. That's kind of the top of the funnel. So how many people are you reaching? And then we go down clicks. So that's kind of your first action that somebody can take after seeing an impression. And that's what drives the click-through rate. After that, you have an engagement rate. So to the extent that that mobile experience drives some kind of web-based or digital action, so signing up for a mail list, redeeming some kind of online coupon, then you can measure that engagement rate. And then further down, certain brands, especially in this case, the KPI is actual physical behavior. Are we driving a physical action? That's where attribution comes in. To the extent that we can ascribe or to give credit to the out-of-home and mobile for driving somebody from wherever they are at that point in time to an actual Wendy's location to make a purchase. And kind of going down that entire funnel and being able to present that to the brand is super valuable because it's kind of giving them really good insight into what's working, what's not working, and then also ascribing the appropriate credit to the medium here, which is out-of-home and mobile working together.
Yeah, and then I know you all were promised results, but unfortunately, because we're in the middle of the campaign, we don't quite have those. But just like Mikhail said, we, for this specific campaign, are measuring everything from the top of the funnel all the way down, which is really exciting that we're actually measuring attribution. So we'll be able to go back to the client at the conclusion of this campaign, and I feel like deliver very compelling results like look at where you are against the category in terms of click-through rate, which we know we're already above, the category or the industry standard for that, and then look at how many, we can tell you how many people were exposed to your out-of-home board and then received your mobile retargeting and then walked into specific Wendy's stores. So while we can't share the exact numbers right now, we can tell you they're very compelling and very high, and I feel very confident when we share this with the client that he'll double the budget and say, let's do this in June.
Is it above 500 so far, 2 weeks in, the verified walk-in?
Yeah, it's a small number. That's definitely higher than
550?
that. Way higher.
600?
Way higher.
1 million.
1 million. I'm not going to pry it out of you. We will definitely share the results of this campaign. It's actually, the numbers were pretty amazing. We were bummed we can't share them with you. But so that gets to the next question is, so we had this kick-ass campaign, and it's still going on. And we've had quite a few that the three of us have worked together on. The worst case that happens in this case is we don't share the results. And whether that's internal or external, we have these great case studies, we have these great videos, and then it's kind of like, yeah, that was awesome. And then we all keep it to ourselves. And that's the industry as a whole. Talk to us about, how do you help sell through that finalized data, and how do you help sell previous campaigns that we've worked together with on selling mobile and out-of-home, and why that's so important?
Well, I think specifically with this campaign, my plan is to, in person, talk with the client, which is often really hard to do. Sometimes you need to follow up on, a performance of a campaign in an email because your client's so busy. But when there's something really compelling and something that's, we can kind of consider this a test, I think it warrants probably a deck and, an in-person presentation. And, obviously the numbers are what tells the story. So I know I'll be sharing, here's the click-through rate, here's the engagement rate, here's, your verified walk-ins. And then I'll hope that they'll be able to tell us that we increase sales. Usually they don't share that, but, we can always cross our fingers. So I think, the onus is probably on the agency in campaigns like this to make sure that this is communicated back to the client. And I think you always need to present it in a way of, and here's actually next steps. Based on the success of this campaign, I think we should probably consider re-implementing it with, your already planned out-of-home or your already planned media. Or, maybe we test it again and build a bigger test. And I know that's what my plan is for this campaign, and that's what we've done in past with other brands that we've worked on.
Yeah, Julia, you guys are really good at the local side of taking these case studies. We've done hundreds of campaigns with out-of-home and mobile. Give us a brief, like how do you take this study and then actually go sell it out to maybe, your local Bojangles or local Raising Cane's?
Yeah, so I actually, going back to the education side, I learn most of what I know about mobile through these case studies because it builds confidence, it helps me learn the strategy, and I take that as a tool to educate my clients. So every time I see one of these new case studies, that's the best way for your clients to learn. They see other people doing it, they see other people getting results, so it's really a great selling tool as well.
Yeah, and again, the core of what we do and the core of this conference is out-of-home. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to waste too much of my time on the mobile side. when my numbers are the out of home, and that's the most important thing. And I know at Lamar we track this very closely. It's how much did we increase in out of home revenue by pairing mobile with this conversation. Again, a lot of the campaigns we've worked with Empower outside of Wendy's, we've seen that, and it's because of exactly what you're saying. The screen plus screen. None of us as consumers, we really don't care where we're served an ad. It's where is that ad served throughout our day, and is it relevant to us, and have we seen that ad over and over again? So that could be a small screen, that could be a desktop, that could be large format, in movie, wall paint, whatever it may be. It's making sure that cohesive journey is key. So we have about 5 minutes. So any questions? If not, these guys are getting grilled with lightning round questions. So please, yes.
Yeah, regarding attribution measurement, you talked about tracking the in-store visits, or verified walk-ins, I guess is the term you use. Is that like an app that you're partnering with that you can verify with walk-ins, or how actually do you do that? How do you verify?
Yeah, Mikhail, why don't you dive in?
Sure. So we do it through basically implementing pixels on the original targeting. So obviously anonymous pixels using IDFA and the Google Ad IDs. And then we have a specific methodology that's in-app for anything that's in terms of actually finding the user in those locations for a specified period of time, so that if they just drove by, obviously that doesn't count. But it is through apps, yes.
So in layman's terms, anonymous device.
Yeah.
That was well done. And I understood it, but I promised we would do this as a first grader. Anonymous device ID, we give Blue Byte the lats and longs of the out-of-home locations. Did that anonymous device ID, was it exposed or had the opportunity to be exposed to the out-of-home? Where'd that device go? And we give them the final point of interest as well as competitors, and did that device end up there? And that's where you kind of see these verified walk-in numbers. And then obviously, I don't know if you want to touch on the filtration of if that device goes there 5 days a week for over 5 hours a day, then it's a worker, so we should probably exclude that data.
Yeah, so we do frequency things, so like if somebody walks in multiple times a day, to your point, we'll exclude those, and then also period of time, dwell time is something that we look at.
Or they just really love Wendy's.
Yeah.
5 hours sitting.
And they are out there.
And they are out there. Any other questions?
Can I ask a quick follow-up? They
Please.
in the Wendy's app for you to track that?
No.
No.
What sort of vendors could you use to do that? Is it all internally used, or is there outside vendors? You're all doing it inside at Lamar, and you're odd, but we can't do it.
So why don't you touch on the 200,000 apps?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean by vendors? As
Okay, so let me boil it down even further. How can we do that?
We as in who?
Vendor, we have, oh, thank you. Hi,
Yeah.
we're a sign vendor from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yep.
And we appreciate you guys. Awesome presentation, all positive. We like it. We're doing a lot of what you're saying, but not the verified walk-ins. So to boil it down even farther, how might we do that? We have online partners, and we have everything that you're doing except for the verified walk-in at this point.
Cool.
And I'm just wondering if you're like, hey, this is what we do, come see me, or if it's something really special that Lamar did, or if there's vendors here at the show we can talk to. Or
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple vendors that offer.
that too.
Yeah, I would say we're not the only ones that offer that type of service. There are definitely vendors that offer that type of service in terms of attribution. They call it by different names. Essentially, the methodologies are different from vendor to vendor, and we can have a follow-up conversation. We can discuss in detail our specific methodology on that. But yes, we can do that with you guys. We obviously have created a really nice, easy process with Lamar in terms of onboarding that data and then looking at those specific behaviors of the devices to see who's actually in there. But to your question, yes, there are vendors that are out there at the show, outside of the show, that have different, and we are one of them.
And just
Yes.
to clarify, because I glazed over this part, it has nothing to do with the Wendy's app. It has to do with the 200,000 apps that are in the ecosystem. If you open an app at a competitive location like a Chick-fil-A, then they're able, through the Pixel, be able to determine, hey, that device. So it has nothing to do with the Wendy's app. We're not building in SDKs in this case, which we can, but for this case, in measuring attribution, has nothing to do with Wendy's specific. Any other questions? Lightning round.
No.
How much time do we have?
3 minutes.
Best Texas story. Mikhail, go.
All right. Thanks, Ian. I don't know if it's appropriate for this group. Oh, saved by the question. There you go.
What's the
staged that.
smallest budget that you need to do something like this?
So for attribution, there are kind of minimums, just because otherwise you don't have anything that's statistically significant. I don't know off the top of my head what that would be. It honestly depends on other factors other than just budget. Just because there's scale, there's number of locations. So if you have a large budget but it's scattered across 1,000 locations that you're measuring, then that's also not going to be enough. But again, looking at specifics, the scale is definitely, and there are minimums for attribution. So you can do a regular mobile campaign, let's say for $2,000, right? And it's fine if you're just delivering impressions and you're measuring clicks. But if you want to drive attribution, you want to measure that with statistical significance, then you need to have much higher numbers than that.
And the other good thing to think of is market size. So it's not so much about the dollars, it's about the number of impressions. So think, in this campaign was in North Carolina, how many impressions do we need to even make an impact? And that's the other thing that I'll caution you guys on, because there are a lot of mobile companies out there, and they'll say, yeah, we could do a mobile campaign for $500, and you may get 300,000 impressions, and is that worth the time? So, and when I mean worth the time, going back to the client and them saying, sweet, we got a verified walk-in of 25 people. Like, that did nothing. So what we want to make sure that we're doing specifically in the out-of-home space is, again, the core business of what we do is out-of-home, is how do we make sure that mobile complements that and gives it enough of an attribution number to where when Erin goes back to Wendy's, they say, wow, we need to increase the out-of-home spend, we need to increase the mobile spend, and we'll shift our funds over to this area. So I think that that's very key.
Julia, when you're calling on local customers,
Yes.
you find that most of them are familiar with mobile? Are they already doing mobile? And if not, how's that education process go?
Sure. So I've been selling mobile for about 2 years now, and the conversation has changed drastically. 2 years ago, it was all about education. Geofencing was not a word that they were familiar with. Now, almost everybody is familiar with it. From a local market, you've got radio, TV, broadcast, newspapers all selling digital. And digital and mobile are two separate things. So you got to make sure you know what you're talking about when you present it to the client. Since out-of-home is our core, I always present out-of-home first, and I always present mobile as a layer, a second touch point, a reinforcement that encourages some sort of action. So kind of presenting it to them as an organic flow of the customer journey from out-of-home to mobile impression to engagement, it makes sense. So it's really actually a pretty easy conversation to have. Creating value is probably one of the hardest things, and I think that bridging the gap between online and offline, that's the value that we offer.
So we're out of time, but I'll leave you guys with this. Don't be afraid to sell it. Focus on your core business, but make sure that you're constantly educating, whether you're engaged with the folks at Blue Byte or your other mobile partners. Challenge yourself. The dollars are there. It's obscene the amount of dollars that are out there. So this is one way to measure the out-of-home space, but more importantly, to value why out-of-home first. And we've seen with a lot of our agency partners a significant shift in dollars. And it's not dollars away from your existing out-of-home buy. It's, hey, I used to spend this money in digital. Now I'm moving these digital dollars, which we've found with Empower. So thank you guys on the panel.
Thank you.
Great job, and thank you guys in the audience.
Thanks for coming.